Thank you for joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. And here's your host, Chris Cebollero.
Well, this is it, and here we go with another great episode of the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. Again, I want to thank you for joining us. This is really the best time of the week for me that I get to impart some of my leadership knowledge and share some of the great expertise that's going on out there when it comes to leadership. And I think that's what's really cool about doing the show is that we kind of get suggestions from you guys and you say, hey, it'd really be great if we learned about these things. And then I have the opportunity to talk to so many great folks. And, I just appreciate the opportunity to come, and I appreciate every single listener we have. One of the things that we're asking everybody to do now is go ahead and rate us on iTunes. We're starting to get a lot of those great ratings. And, it does help with new listeners coming on board. And I really do appreciate if going over and rating us on iTunes. Now one of the things that I think is happening, and we're starting to see it a lot more, is more and more of this Facebook Live, and more people are starting to get into this video, and using video to, expand their brands and talk about their services and just kind of educate, and give a little bit of that knowledge. And I got to be honest, I got to start thinking about maybe putting this show in video as well and not just in podcast. But then the question comes, how do we edit that video and make it look just as professional as we do with an audio recording? And I got to tell you, I've had some challenges with, editing my videos. And what do I do? Do I do it myself? Do I find a company to help me and outsource that? Well, rather than me answer those questions for you, it was time to bring back our resident expert in everything video, coming to us all the way from Canada, is our resident expert, Sheryl Plouffe. Sheryl, thanks again for joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast.
Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here because this is a topic, of course, close to my heart. And I really love what you just said about maybe looking at how do I turn what I'm already doing with the podcast and maybe turning it into a video show. And that's what's so exciting about this. Anyone today has the ability to create their own TV show. But of course, the foundation to that is video. And a lot of people are put off by video because it seems complex. It seems too complicated. It seems like it's going to take too much time. And I'm here to dispel those myths. And we're going to talk today about video editing, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, when it comes to, using video, we've had some great shows before. We're going to talk towards the end about you've got a lot of great resources on your sites for people. But I really want to kind of focus on 2 points today, Sheryl. And maybe the first part of the show, we talk about pros and cons of, me being the editor and me kind of editing these videos. And then maybe the second part, we kind of turn the tables and talk about outsourcing and maybe the pros and cons there. So I guess to start off, what are some of the pros of kind of doing it in-house? I gotta think about it. Am I going to use my desktop? Can I use my smartphone? What kind of programs? There's just so many things to think about. So where do you start us off?
I do have some recommendations, Chris, and I will give those at the end of the show. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what would be the positive outcome of actually editing your own videos. And the answer to your question of, should I do it on my desktop or do it on my phone? It's entirely up to you. You can do either. You can even do both. What I do love about the idea of using your phone or tablet to do editing is that it's mobile. So you can literally use your time effectively. If you're out, let's say, for example, you're out somewhere with your kids, and like, for instance, in my case, I'm a goalie mom. So my son is on the ice for an hour for a practice, or he's something like that. I could actually sit there with my phone and edit a video. So it's using my time effectively. Now, from that standpoint, if you don't want to do the editing on a small screen and you prefer to do it on a larger canvas, then I would recommend doing it on your desktop. So I'll give you those recommendations in a bit. Here are the pros of doing video editing yourself. One is that it's much faster. It's faster because if you start to do video editing yourself and you at the beginning, it can be a little bit cumbersome because it's something new, right? There's a learning curve. But once you start to do it, it's a mechanical process. And just like driving a manual car, right, driving a standard, you start to learn and it becomes automatic. So once you get to that point where it's automatic, video editing becomes really, really fast. And it's just click, 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 click. Next thing you know, your video is done. So it can be a lot faster than the process of let's say, outsourcing it to someone else once you get over that initial learning curve. Another advantage of doing it yourself is that it's affordable. Video editing, to outsource it to someone else, it costs money. So if you're bootstrapping it and you're really looking at trying to save dollars at this point, I would recommend doing it yourself to start because it's much more affordable, especially with the programs I'm going to recommend in a bit. And the third thing is that it allows you to control the branding of your video. Now, that's not to say that if you outsource it, you wouldn't be able to guide an editor to what type of style you want a video, but there's a process that has to happen there to teach them or train them what it is that you want. When you do it yourself, you have full control over the branding elements that you can put inside your video.
You know, I mean, you make it sound so easy, but the thing that I was thinking, you know, when we're talking about editing this ourselves, I'm not really good at this though, Sheryl. I mean, so how do I get this expertise? How do I learn how to, I mean, do these programs that you're going to tell us about, do they come with tutorials? I mean, is it just, make the mistakes, fake it till you make it kind of thing? I mean, what advice do you have for us there?
So Chris, the thing about video editing is that we put so much pressure on ourselves. We feel like we have to create these amazing videos that are going to go viral, when in fact, if we're looking to create videos that are going to build our influence and build our brand and get our message out to more people using social media as an example, we're talking about 1 to 2 minute long videos. We want to try to keep these videos as short as possible on social media so that people watch the entire video and get to our call to action. So when we keep these videos short like that, let's say 2 minutes as an example, that's not a very, very long video. So it's absolutely possible to be able to create a whole bunch of these types of smaller, shorter length videos and do it ourselves.
You know, Sheryl, I remember, I mean, we've done so many shows and you've given us so much expertise. I remember one time that we were talking where you made mention that is it best even to have just an authentic recording? So where do you flip the coin now on, maybe the bumps and stumbles in your video and then saying, you know what, I really want to have it a little bit more professionally, edited. So how do you flip that coin into being a little bit more authentic compared to being on the editing side?
Well, I am a big proponent of authenticity, and I love the idea of unscripting, especially when we're talking about short videos like these, let's say 2 minutes. And if you've done the preparation so that you know what your introduction to the video is going to be, what points you want to talk about, again, without a script, in the middle part of your video, and have a strong call to action, what this does is it does allow you to be able to just be authentic and speak from the heart. Now, if you did choose to use a teleprompter app as an example, you could do that. By keeping it short and by keeping it simple, it actually simplifies the editing process. And what I would really recommend is when you're recording your video, in order to ease the editing process, record it in one fell swoop. Record one file and say everything that you want to say in that one video file, so that when you get it into your editing system, all you're really dealing with is one file and you're extracting out the extraneous parts or extracting out the mistakes. What you do then is you merge all of those pieces together, and you can add a very simple transition between those places where you cut, and you squish it all together, and you've got yourself a video. That is, in my opinion, the easiest way to effectively edit videos and really save a lot of time.
Well, I think you make it sound really simple. So you told us the pros now of doing it ourselves. Maybe we talk about some of the negatives and how do we overcome those?
Well, I think the biggest one is just there is going to be a learning curve because it's a new process. It's a new system or software. It's just like anything new in life. There's going to be a bit of a learning curve. But you do have to get into the system and you've got to just play around with it. You've got to click the buttons and not be afraid. No one's going to see it. It's all either on your phone or on your desktop. No one has to see this. You haven't published it yet. So you can go in there and play with the buttons, and most of the softwares and different programs that you might look at, and I'll give you recommendations, they typically do have training resources, be it internally or on YouTube in most cases. So the learning curve is one of the cons because it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to a new system and a new process. Another con is that it can take time, especially when you are starting out. When you edit your first, say, few videos, because it's a new process, that process is going to take a little bit more time. But again, I really want to encourage people to use simplified methods so that they can really embrace this idea of doing their own videos themselves, and that's largely the foundation of my programs.
Yeah, and I think that once you kind of go through those programs, you really kind of get the the feel of how to do it great. I mean, so it almost sounds like, in this sense, Sheryl, it wouldn't be a bad idea that before you actually start putting these videos up, you kind of, I don't want to say waste a couple, but you kind of play with a couple, learn the processes, make the mistakes, and then when you get good at it, then you say, all right, I'm going to turn this process on maybe in another week or so after I've completed my own kind of online training.
Absolutely. I think that when you're first starting out, you should just do a couple of different video files. Learn how to get them into your software, play around with them, click some buttons, and don't be afraid. They're not going to hurt the system. But what it does is it allows you to see all of the features and capabilities that are there. And like I said, once you get used to where to click and how to cut a clip, it all becomes really easy. And then And the thing is, that video doesn't have to get published. That video is just a working project on your computer, on your phone. No one ever has to see it but you. So yes, I do recommend that. Do a little bit of experimentation and don't be afraid to push buttons.
All right, you're making it sound really easy, Sheryl. I guess now you've given us the pros and cons about doing it ourselves, and I think you're giving me a little bit more confidence to say I think I can do this. But let's go ahead and flip the coin. I think really what it comes down for me is time. And do I do it myself? And where do I find the time to do that? Or is it best to find somebody who is already great at this? To kind of give them my files and say, let's go ahead and produce this. So let's go ahead and talk about outsourcing, and maybe you can give us the pros of that process first.
The pros of outsourcing, Chris, is that you're taking those tech headaches away. A lot of people are apprehensive about technology. They don't consider themselves tech savvy. And if you're one of those people who would just rather pay someone else to do it, then you should, because your time is, worth something. So it really depends on, it's really a case-by-case basis. So taking those tech headaches away can be a real advantage for someone who's just does not want to do the technology and doesn't want to deal with it at all. The other thing is that you can focus on other things, other revenue-generating activities, if someone else is taking that editing part away from you. So there are advantages to outsourcing. I guess one of the cons of outsourcing, though, is that it takes a bit of time to find that right person. You want to find the right fit, someone who really gets the vision that you have for your videos. And from a branding perspective, you'll need to guide them as to how you want those videos to look once they're completed. And it can take time. One thing about outsourcing video editing is that you give the file to someone, and typically this process can take, could be a week, depending on how many projects that they're working on as well. Yours will not be the only project that they're likely working on. So it can take time, and we want the outcome of the videos to be in line with your brand. So it's important to find the right person.
Yeah, that was the question I was going to ask. But, as you were saying this, where you were saying now, it may take up to a week, I guess the question that popped into my head, when we think about doing this content, do we need to make sure that it's more of an evergreen content, something that we can play today and it's going to be just as new as it is a year from now? Or is it, if we're going to use outsourcing, does that kind of hamper our ability to be, in the moment more than it does just to kind of be generic?
Yes, it's a great point. I think that when it comes to outsourcing video editing or any portion of the content creation process, we can look at it two ways. There's different types of content where we might want to look at that. For example, if I was creating a long-form sales page video, something that was scripted, I might want to outsource that to someone else. However, when it comes to short, authentic, in-the-moment, on-location, social media videos, personality-driven videos, that sort of thing, where we're doing them more on a regular basis, let's say maybe daily or weekly, it would be likely not only cost prohibitive, but time prohibitive to outsource that. So I think that if we look at it as what kind of content am I creating? Is it evergreen, sales page, long form format type videos, that might be something that you want to look at outsourcing. Whereas on the other end of it, creating social media videos that really build your brand and get your message out there, and that you're doing on a daily or weekly basis, you're doing them regularly and consistently, that are in the moment, those are videos that I would suggest you can do yourself.
Okay, what other negatives, what other cons do you have for outsourcing?
I think that it's really based on I think it's time. I think that's really one of the biggest considerations. It does take more time when you outsource any process at all, be it video editing or any other process. So, because now you're involving another person and they have clients of their own, and you've got to fit into what it is that they're doing in a week. So the time is really probably the biggest issue or obstacle or challenge when you're looking to outsource. The thing I love about doing video editing yourself is just how quickly this process can go once you get accustomed to it. I'll give you an example, Chris. I just had to do just recently a video for an internal training that I was doing. I did it in my office. I basically got that video footage from my phone into my computer within seconds because that's the process that I use. And I had that video edited and up probably within 15 minutes. So it just goes to show you that if I was to outsource that particular video, then all of a sudden I've got to contact that person, get the file to them, wait for them to do it, review their work, so that process takes a lot more time. So that's why I really recommend video editing and doing it yourself.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the thing I learned from that exchange was I'm just going to send you all my videos. If you're doing everything in 15 minutes, you're going to be, I think I'm going to outsource them to you. But so I think you've given us a lot to think about now. So really, it seems like, we have the opportunity to really kind of learn to do that. Now, I know you have some resources for us as well on both sides. And maybe you can kind of start with the, doing it yourself approach. What resources do you have for us?
I think if you want to do video editing on your phone, I'm an iPhone person, like I'm an Apple girl, so I'll talk about iPhone, but I believe that these apps that I'm going to recommend are available both Android and iOS. The app recommendations are Video Shop. Video Shop app is fantastic for editing videos right directly on your phone. And there's a new one that I've actually just come to know, and it's called Video Leap. Video Leap is exciting because it is an app that allows you to do chroma key, in other words, green screen technology, right on the app and on your phone. Now, of course, you have to look at having a green screen background when you record your video, but it's an exciting direction, and I really think that this app is worth looking at. So Video Shop and Video Leap are my two video editing app recommendations. There's another app that I would suggest looking at in conjunction with the desktop editing software that I'm going to recommend right now. The app is called Fuse, F-U-S-E, and it's from the company TechSmith. TechSmith creates an editing platform called Camtasia, and I'm a big fan of Camtasia. These two things work together to allow you to seamlessly transfer footage from your phone right onto your desktop application. And you can do this without cables, without plugging in cords, and it happens literally in an instant. It's really amazing. It's one of the foundational things that I teach in my program. So the desktop recommendation is Camtasia, and the companion app to that is called Fuse. So those are my recommendations, Chris, when it comes to DIY video editing as far as resources.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I'm a big Camtasia fan. I've been using Camtasia for a lot of years now. And, when you talk about the ease of operation, when you talk about, the ability to produce or edit some really great videos, it really is a great tool to use. I've not used the Fuse before. I think I'm getting too old. I think my eyes are a little bit too old to start editing on my phone. But, if you say it's easy, I may give it a shot, Sheryl. But what about, if we're going to outsource? Do you have some thoughts about resources there?
Well, I think that there's a few different ways you can go. If you have a local school or college in your community and they have a program that, let's say, video production program or something like that, where you've got college students who are looking for work, who may be coming out of school and are looking for opportunities, that might be a good resource to look into. I think other than that, some freelance recommendations might be to look at Upwork, look on Upwork and be able to really find a freelancer who does video editing. And then another one might be Fiverr. It's a little bit less expensive. I think that through Fiverr, you would have to potentially do a little bit more vetting, but Fiverr, Upwork, and maybe even local schools in your area are great resources to find some freelance video editors.
Cheryl, I am so glad you said that. And I think that one of the things that we don't do well enough as entrepreneurs, as we don't do well enough as speakers, is we don't utilize the students who are in the school learning how to do this. And, I've been a very big advocate for, if I have projects, to kind of bring them to the schools to say, would your students be interested in taking on this project, even as a class project? And I think that that's one of the things that we forget. But there are some great resources in those schools, and I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, it's an untapped resource, I believe. And when you think about people who are coming out of school, they're looking for opportunities. So they might not be, charging, high prices at this point because they're looking for opportunities to build up their portfolio or build up their resume. And when I actually used to be a professor, I used to teach at the college here locally. I did that for several years, and I know firsthand the kind of talent that's coming out of the school.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I got to tell you, Sheryl, every time you come here, you really kind of open our eyes when it comes to, you make video producing, editing, and just the use of it on a daily basis so easy. So, again, I want to thank you for joining us and being our resident expert in all things video.
I'd love to talk about this, Chris, and I could probably talk about it for another hour.
I know
because I'm really passionate about this. I love this stuff, and it's my pleasure to be here on your program.
Now, one of the things that we know about you is you have a lot of free programs, you have a lot of classes that you do. So right now, if folks really wanted to get, and be part of your network, to really kind of have the opportunity to, experience your expertise, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, Chris, I'm always looking to create new things, and I'm actually working on a few really exciting projects right now. I think the best way to connect with me would be through my Facebook group. If you go on Facebook and you search Personal Brand Breakthrough, that is the name of my Facebook group, and you can request to join. But that's a really great community of growth-minded entrepreneurs, real estate professionals, coaches, and consultants who are all actively looking to build their brands and businesses with video, and I put a lot of resources in there. And one of the things I do that's really exciting is I will put videos in the group, but I'll explain the behind-the-scenes production of that video. So I'll talk about how that video was made, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think that that's a huge learning for people who are part of the group, and it's a huge resource and really valuable in that sense.
Awesome. And you do have a website. What's your website?
Yeah, my website is SherylPlouffe.com. And I really am looking to connect with anyone who wants to take their marketing to the next level with video.
And I got to tell you, you are one of the industry experts. And for everybody out there, if you are looking to do anything video and you need expertise, Sheryl Plouffe is the person that you want to talk to. But Sheryl, I want to thank you again for joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. And you have to promise that you are going to come back again and share some of your expertise with our listeners.
Indeed, I do promise. Thank you, Chris.
And everybody out there, video is really the wave of the future. And we really have to consider now making this part of our brand and making this part of our marketing for, our products and our services, or really just for people to get to know you. Remember, regardless of what you're selling, a product or a service, people have to know, like, and trust you. And what's the best way they can do that? They can do it through video. So everyone out there, I want to thank you for joining us again on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. And I look forward to chatting with everyone again real soon.
Thank you for joining us. The Ultimate Leadership Podcast is a production of chrissabellero.com. You can interact with us by email at ultimateleadership16@gmail.com. All rights reserved.